Hello. Hello, this is the third video I've made. This is on, we're talking about the Federal Register notices and postings. The Federal Register is an official daily publication of the United States federal government. It is where the federal agencies and President formally publish rules, proposed rules, notices, presidential documents such as executive orders and proclamations. Today I will introduce the notice, agency information collection activities, submission to the Office of Management and the Budget for review and approval, comment request, Survey of Postgraduate Employment for Foreign Language and Area Studies, FLAS, Fellowship Program by the Office of Post-Secondary Education in the Department of Education. This is Federal Register Notice number 91 FR 39087-39088, docket number ED 2026 SCC 1486 from June 29th of 2026. I want to hear your feedback, thoughts, questions, viewpoints on this notice. So leave comments below. Push the like button and hit the free subscribe button that occurs at the end of the video as a I just forgot the word. There's a thumbnail on the screen that you can press, and that will subscribe you. I'm Malcolm McCallum. I hold a PhD in environmental sciences and have over 30 years experience teaching in higher education. As an environmental scientist, my role is to research, educate, and inform about how the world of humans and the world of nature interact. This is called the socio-ecological system. The umbrella of this, the overarching purpose of this field is called environmental sciences, is to protect the everyday people and the natural world from the rich and powerful. So I believe by just explaining what news items appear in the Federal Register, I will be informing everyday people what the government is really doing, if they are working for you or if it's someone else. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe so you will always be in the loop with what they want hidden by distraction campaigns on TV and radio. Okay, so this notice is, the author of this notice is Ross Santee, Chief Data Officer in the Office of Planning, Evaluation, Policy, and Development. There is a link on the Federal Register notice where you can get to it, and you can contact these people. The contact party for comments is Curran Abrams. And his or her phone number, because I'm not sure what Curran is a male or female name. The phone number is 202-987-1920, and the comment deadline is July 29th of 2026. So you have just about 3 weeks to think about this and make comments. A brief summary of this notice is that the notice is a Paperwork Reduction Act submission for the Office of Management and Budget review. It's not a new rule changing the FLAS fellowship program. The Department of Education is seeking comment on the revision of a currently approved information collection, the Survey of Postgraduate Employment for the Foreign Language and Area Studies Fellowship Program. The collection is tied to OMB Control No. 1840-0829 and has an estimated 10,000 annual responses and 1,300 annual burden hours, and is open for comment until July 29th, 2026. Of course, you know, what annual burden hours is that's how many hours of work it requires to process these. And of course, we have seen massive cuts to the Department of Education over the years. There aren't enough people to do the work that they're supposed to do. And so as a result, it gives the appearance that these people aren't doing their jobs. Of course, a lot of places have this kind of thing going on, but that is the general practice of efficiency management for people who are more interested in that aren't interested in quality work being done. Maybe that's a way to say it. So how does this change previous policy? Well, the notice doesn't. It doesn't change underlying statutory mission of Title VI, student eligibility, institutional eligibility, or the basic FLAS fellowship structure. It changes the administrative status of the information collection. And the information collection is pretty important because how do you know what's going on with the program if you don't survey anybody? The April 22nd, 2026 notice opened the earlier public comment stage, and the June 29th notice advances the revised collection of OMB review with the new 30-day comment window. The practical change is narrow. The Education Department revised estimated response and burden totals to reflect expected current responses and burden hours for the survey components, and made minor edits such as removing outdated links and updating contact information. This is program evaluation and accountability infrastructure, not a policy shift in content or language or area studies training. Of course, if you don't have the infrastructure on accountability there are issues that go along with that. The rationale for the change is that the Paperwork Reduction Act must justify whether the collection is necessary, whether the burden estimate is accurate, whether the information is useful and clear, and how the collection burden can be minimized, including through information technology. The substantive rationale is accountability, and FLAS and related Title VI programs exist to build U.S. capacity in foreign language area international studies. The survey gives the Education Department and grantees information about whether fellows move into employment, further education, or training pathways connected to the program goals. Congress explicitly required a survey of students after completion under 20 U.S.C. U.S. Code number 1121D. The Democratic and Republican viewpoints on this vary. I didn't really find comments by local or state politicians on this exact notice. No surprise. I also did not find members of Congress statements on the specific June 29, 2026 information collection notice. The political views, therefore, come from current and recent national level statements and policy positions on FLAS, Title VI, and international foreign language education more broadly. Of course, it is the role of the legislature and other organizations to provide oversight in these matters in the executive branch, and clearly they aren't really making any opinion known or demonstrating that they have even looked at this notice. That's unfortunate because comments from the legislators are important to be incorporated into the consideration of this policy, whether it should or should not go forward. Democratic views are generally pro Title VI. Democratic members who have spoken on closely related legislation generally frame FLAS and Title VI as investments in national security, economic competitiveness, diplomacy, cultural knowledge, and global workforce preparation. Representatives Valerie Foushee, Deborah Ross, and Jimmy Panetta introduced the Advancing International and Foreign Language Education Act in 2024 to reauthorize Title VI through fiscal year 2030. Their statement emphasized that the United States lags in foreign language proficiency and that foreign language and cultural education support military, diplomatic, business, cybersecurity, health, engineering, and global economic goals. All of this is true. They're all just blatant facts. Republican or conservative reform viewpoints are different. Conservative critics do not necessarily deny that the foreign language and area expertise can serve U.S. interest. They're in agreement on that point, at least to some degree. The critique is that Title VI programs may drift away from national interest goals, may be insufficiently accountable, and may be better reoriented, consolidated, or defunded. Of course, if you're concerned about something not having staying within interest goals or being insufficiently accountable, I am not clear on why you would actually stop a program that monitors its accountability. But they must have a reason. And it may be better, as we said, really, this doesn't really, the view doesn't really, it seems to have a mixed message. A 2026 Education Department State Department fact sheet says that the Trump administration did not fund some programs in fiscal year 2025 because it prioritized other programs, and argues that the State Department is better positioned to tailor foreign language programs to national security and foreign policy priorities if Congress funds them in the future. The Heritage Foundation argues that Title VI programs should be eliminated or reformed to focus more explicitly on U.S. national interests, free markets, external partners, and assessment and viewpoint diversity. Bipartisan cross-current. There is bipartisan cross-current here. Foreign language capacity has also been bipartisan support. The American Academy of Arts and Sciences created its Commission on Language Learning in response to bipartisan requests from members of the Senate and House, and the Commission examined language learning in relation to economic growth, cultural diplomacy, productivity, and national needs. This suggests the issue is not purely partisan. The divide is more about program design, accountability, ideology neutrality, agency control, and whether university-based area studies should receive federal support. Now, those are meritable questions that should all be able to be negotiated and come up with some type of compromise between different groups that might have opposing views. Certainly, but possibly they're just too busy on TV grandstanding and talking about issues that really have very little impact on our daily lives, whereas education and whether or not people can speak foreign languages actually does. There is scholarly and technical background to support these views. Evidence supporting the pro-FLAS, pro-survey position include a CRS report describes Title VI as one of the oldest federal higher education support programs and notes that it reflects a federal priority for diplomacy, national security, and trade competitiveness. CRS also summarized National Foreign Language Center findings that Title VI support was critically important to U.S. capacity in less commonly taught languages, including languages of unpredictable and strategic importance. The American Academy Project supports the argument that language learning is a national capacity issue rather than merely an elective educational preference. In fact, in the United States, very few people speak more than one language, and so that's where the capacity issue comes from. You can't just grab another person who knows multiple languages off the street. That's what they're kind of saying. Its commission was asked to consider how language learning affects economic growth, cultural diplomacy, productivity, and broader national needs, and it recommended wider access to language education. The Defense Language and National Security Education Office also describes the National Security Education Program as a major federal initiative to build a broader pool of U.S. citizens with foreign language and international skills for national security and competitiveness. These sources support the specific information collected because a fellowship program that claims to build human capital needs outcome data. And that's what this survey does. Postgraduate employment and training surveys are not merely paperwork. They are a way to test whether public funds actually help produce the intended workforce, academic, diplomatic, business, and public sector capacity. Evidence supporting the reform and skepticism position also exists. The same CRS report identifies core reauthorization questions: whether the federal government should continue supporting foreign language and area studies through Title VI, how such programs should coordinate with other federal efforts, and whether grants should target languages and world regions of critical federal interest. Error notes that Title VI and Fulbright-Hays programs had not comprehensively evaluated the degree to which funded projects demonstrated effects on international education and foreign language instruction, which supports the argument for stronger evaluation. The Heritage Critique argues that Title VI has not adequately served U.S. interests and that civil society and markets could do more of the work, except perhaps for obscure languages. That does not refute the need for language capacity, but it does challenge whether the existing university-centered Title VI model is the best vehicle. The best synthesis is that outcome data are necessary regardless of one's politics. Supporters need data to defend the program, and skeptics need the data to test whether it is worth continuing. The relevance of this to the socio-ecological system is only indirectly ecological, but it is still relevant to the socio-ecological system. It concerns the educational and workforce infrastructure that shapes the nation's ability to understand other regions, languages, cultures, institutions, and knowledge systems. Many socio-ecological problems, such as climate adaptation, water conflict, food systems, biodiversity, zoonotic diseases, energy transitions, disaster response, migration, and environmental diplomacy, are transboundary and culturally embedded. They require more than technical science. They require language capacity, regional knowledge, cultural interpretation, and institutional understanding. The notice itself collects data on FLAS alumni outcomes. That makes it a governance feedback mechanism. It helps determine whether public investments in language and area studies are building the human capacity needed for diplomacy, security, trade, education, research, and indirectly socio-ecological problem solving. So that by cohort, federal governance has a moderate positive impact from this notice. The survey supports accountability for federally funded human capital program that helps the Education Department assess whether FLAS outcomes align with statutory goals. The education and training pipeline can be positively impacted by this if the data are used to improve fellowships, language offerings, area studies, and professional pathways. It'll be neutral if the data are collected but not used. Students and alumni have mixed impacts. Alumni face reporting burden and potential privacy concerns, but outcome data can strengthen the case for future fellowship and improved program design. National security and diplomacy are potentially positively impacted by this notice. Better data can show whether FLAS produces personnel with language and regional expertise needed for government, defense, diplomacy, intelligence, and international engagement. Economic competitiveness is potentially positively affected by this notice. Language and cultural expertise can support trade, business, international research, supply chain understanding, and global workforce readiness. Research and public knowledge also may receive positive impacts if outcome data demonstrate where area studies and language programs fill national knowledge gaps, especially in the less commonly taught languages. The socio-ecological capacity is impacted indirectly, but this is very real. Language and regional expertise help the United States participate more effectively in global environmental governance, climate adaptation, biodiversity, food, water, and public health cooperation. Equity and access are potentially positively impacted if the survey results reveal who benefits from FLAS and whether fellowships reach students from varied institutions and backgrounds. Potentially negative impacts could be experienced if the survey burden discourages a response from some groups. Public accountability would be positively influenced by this notice. This information collection helps the public ask whether Title VI funds produce measurable outcomes. It also gives critics and supporters common data to debate. And that can only result in some form of a reasonable negotiation, compromise, and potentially more useful program after those discussions are made. Direct ecological conditions have no immediate effect from this notice. The notice does not regulate land, water, wildlife, energy, pollution, or natural resources. Its socio-ecological relevance is through human capacity and governance of those elements. The bottom line, this is not a dramatic new education policy. It is a small administrative notice about renewing and revising a survey. But it is important because it is the feedback loop behind the federal program intended to build U.S. language and area studies capacity. From a socio-ecological lens, the direct impact is not ecological regulation, it is human capacity. The survey helps determine whether the nation is producing people with the linguistic and regional expertise needed to understand and manage global systems that connect society, environment, security, economics, and public policy. And that ends this discussion of this notice on the Federal Register. Please be sure to access this notice and make any comments to the contact person in the Federal Register notice. It would be a good thing to do for the betterment of your fellow Americans. Have a nice day.